The kitchen timer rang just as Dorothy Walsh pulled her apple pie from the oven. She set it on the cooling rack and wiped her hands on her floral apron. Tuesday afternoons were for baking, and she had 3 more pies to finish before the church fundraiser tomorrow. Her wooden spoon, the one her mother had given her 40 years ago, sat in a bowl of cookie dough waiting for her attention. She reached for the spoon when everything went white. The sensation felt like being pulled through a very small tube at incredible speed. Dorothy's stomach lurched, her vision blurred. Then suddenly she stood in a massive chamber made of some kind of glowing metal. The wooden spoon was still clutched in her right hand. 6 creatures surrounded her. Not humans. Definitely not humans. The closest one looked like a giant praying mantis wearing armor. It stood at least 8 feet tall with 4 arms and eyes that glowed soft blue. When it spoke, the words came out in clicks and whistles, but somehow Dorothy understood them perfectly. Greetings, honored warrior of Earth. I am Ambassador Reln of the Galactic Council. We have summoned you to save our civilization from destruction. Dorothy looked down at her apron, which had a flower handprint on it. She looked at her wooden spoon. She looked back at the giant mantis creature. Young man, she said firmly, using the same tone that had terrified 3 generations of school children. You just yanked me out of my kitchen without so much as a by your leave. I have pies in the oven and a fundraiser tomorrow. This better be good. The mantis creature's antennae twitched. You do not understand. Our translation matrix identified you as Earth's most decorated warrior. Your achievements in combat are legendary. Combat? Dorothy frowned. I managed a school cafeteria for 30 years. The only combat I saw was breaking up food fights. Another creature stepped forward. This one looked like a bear crossed with a lizard, covered in dark scales with glowing orange eyes. The human claims she is not a warrior. Reln, your intelligence was faulty. Impossible, Reln insisted. The data clearly showed multiple decorations, a reputation that terrifies all who know her, and mastery of an ancient weapon. He gestured at the wooden spoon. Dorothy put her free hand on her hip. My decorations are blue ribbons from the county fair. My reputation comes from running the strictest lunchroom in Montana. And this, she held up the spoon, is for mixing cookie dough. A small creature near the back, barely 3 feet tall and covered in damp-looking blue skin, made a nervous chirping sound. Ambassador, perhaps we made an error. The linguistic algorithms may have misinterpreted the data. Silence, Pip, the bear lizard growled. I am Captain Brox of the Celestial Dawn. We do not have time for errors. The devourer swarm approaches. We need warriors, not bakers. Dorothy studied each of them carefully. Despite their strange appearances, she recognized panic when she saw it. These creatures were desperate. The small blue one named Pip looked ready to cry. All right, she said, her voice softening slightly. Someone explain what's happening. Use small words and start from the beginning. Reln's antenna drooped. Our galaxy faces extinction. The devourer swarm, a species of insect-like creatures, consumes entire star systems. Planets, ships, stations, everything. They have destroyed 17 civilizations in the past year. Our combined military forces cannot stop them. So you came looking for help on Earth, Dorothy said. An ancient prophecy spoke of a human warrior who conquers with unexpected tools. We searched your planet's databases for the greatest fighter. Your name appeared with the highest threat rating in your region. Dorothy almost laughed. That's because I once made the mayor's son scrub tables for a week after he threw mashed potatoes at another student. His mother tried to have me fired, didn't work. Pip made another nervous sound. Ambassador, what do we do now? The human is not what we expected. Brox stomped one heavy foot. We return her and find the real warrior. We wasted valuable time. Now hold on, Dorothy said sharply. Everyone stopped. There was something about her tone that demanded attention. You folks are in trouble. Real trouble, and you came all the way to my planet asking for help. The polite thing to do is at least hear you out. She looked around the chamber. It was huge, with walls that seemed to glow from within. Strange symbols covered every surface. But she also noticed dirt in the corners and what looked like cobwebs near the ceiling. The air smelled stale. When was the last time anyone cleaned this place? She asked. Relon tilted his head. Cleaned? I do not understand the relevance. Look at those corners. Look at that ventilation grate. You've got buildup that could clog your air systems. No wonder everyone looks so tired. You're probably not getting proper oxygen circulation. Pip moved closer, his large eyes fixed on Dorothy. The environmental systems have been operating below optimal efficiency for 3 months. Engineering cannot determine the cause. Because they're looking for complicated problems, Dorothy said. She walked to the nearest wall panel, stood on her toes and ran a finger along a vent. It came back covered in gray dust. Sometimes the solution is simple. Clean your filters. Brox growled. We did not summon you to be our custodian. No, you summoned me to help with a problem. I'm good at solving problems, maybe not the way you expected, but good nonetheless. She turned to face them all. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to show me around this ship. You're going to explain exactly what this devourer swarm does, and you're going to feed me dinner because I'm hungry and it's well past my supper time. Then we'll figure out what to do next. The human makes demands, Brock said, but his tone had shifted slightly. The human has common sense, Dorothy corrected, which seems to be in short supply around here. Now who's going to give me the tour? Pip raised one webbed hand hesitantly. I could assist, honored. Ma'am? Dorothy. Just call me Dorothy, and stop looking so scared. I don't bite. She smiled at the small creature. Unless you're hiding vegetables in the garbage instead of eating them, then we'll have words. As Pip led her toward a doorway, Dorothy glanced back at Reln and Brox. Both looked completely confused. Good. Confused meant they'd stop assuming things and start listening. She still had no idea how to get home, but first things first. These folks needed help, even if it wasn't the kind they thought they needed. Pip walked quickly through the corridors of the celestial dawn, his webbed feet making soft slapping sounds on the metal floor. Dorothy followed at a more measured pace, her wooden spoon tucked into her apron pocket. She noticed things as they walked. Loose panels, flickering lights, crew members who looked exhausted. How many people live on this ship? She asked. Approximately 3,000 across 17 species, Pip answered. His voice was high and nervous. Though we are below full crew capacity. Many requested transfers after the last encounter with the swarm. Scared, huh? Terrified, ma'am. Dorothy. Pip's skin rippled with colors she couldn't quite name. I have served on the Celestial Dawn for 2 years. I have never seen morale this low. They entered what appeared to be a dining area. Long tables filled the space, but only a handful of crew members sat scattered throughout. At the far end, a bored-looking creature with 6 arms served food from behind a counter. This is the main galley, Pip explained. Would you like to eat? Dorothy walked to the counter and examined the food. Strange colored lumps sat in metal containers. Nothing looked appetizing. She picked up a serving spoon and tasted something green. Bland, she announced. No salt, no seasoning, no love put into it. The 6-armed cook turned all of its eyes toward her. The nutritional requirements are met. Taste is irrelevant. Taste is never irrelevant. People who don't enjoy their food don't eat properly. People who don't eat properly get sick and make mistakes. Dorothy pointed her wooden spoon at the cook. How many crew members have reported to medical with digestive issues in the past month? Pip checked a device on his wrist. 47. That is higher than normal. Because this food is terrible, Dorothy said bluntly. She turned to Pip. Take me to your food storage. I want to see what you're working with. 20 minutes later, Dorothy stood in a massive storage bay filled with containers of various alien ingredients. Some she recognized the concepts of, even if they looked strange. Proteins, starches, vegetables of some kind. Others made no sense at all. All right, she said, rolling up her sleeves. Here's lesson 1. Food is fuel, but it's also comfort. Your crew is scared and tired. They need something that makes them feel better. Pip, can you read these labels to me? For the next 2 hours, Dorothy worked with Pip and the reluctant 6-armed cook whose name turned out to be Gormal. She combined ingredients based on basic cooking principles. Protein with starch, acid to brighten flavors, fat to carry taste. She couldn't make it taste exactly like human food, but she could make it taste like something. Heat this one slowly, she instructed Gormal. Low and steady. Patience matters in cooking. I do not have time for patience, Gormel complained. I must serve 3,000 meals daily, and they all taste like cardboard. Trust me on this. When the first dish finished, Dorothy made Gormel and Pip taste it. Pip's eyes went wide. Even Gormel's expression changed. This is good, Gormel admitted reluctantly. Of course it is. Now make more and serve it for dinner. Tell me what the crew says. Word spread quickly through the ship. By dinner time, the galley was more crowded than it had been in weeks. Crew members came for the food and stayed to talk. The mood shifted noticeably. Dorothy sat with Pip in the corner and watched. You changed something important, Pip said quietly. Morale was terrible. Now look at them. Everyone deserves a good meal, Dorothy said, especially when they're scared. My husband used to say that an army marches on its stomach. Same principle applies here. Your husband was a warrior? He was a military strategist. Spent 30 years in the service. I learned a lot just listening to him talk about his work. Dorothy smiled sadly. He passed 5 years ago, cancer. I am sorry for your loss, thank you, sweetheart. He had a good life. We both did. She patted Pip's damp shoulder. Now, why don't you tell me more about this devourer swarm? Pip pulled up images on his wrist device. Dorothy saw ships being torn apart by thousands of insect-like creatures. Each one was about the size of a car with sharp mandibles and armored shells. They attack in coordinated groups, Pip explained. Millions at once. They strip ships down to nothing and consume the materials. Then they move to the next target. Our weapons barely slow them down. Dorothy studied the images carefully. They move in patterns, see? Like a school of fish or a flock of birds. They're following each other. Yes, we believe they share a collective consciousness, a hive mind. So if you disrupt the mind, you disrupt the whole group? In theory. But we cannot reach whatever controls them. They protect their central ships too well. Dorothy tapped the wooden spoon against her chin thoughtfully. What do they eat? I mean, besides ships, Pip blinked. We do not know. They consume metals and certain energy sources. Our scientists believe they are mining resources to support rapid population expansion. Everything eats something. Everything needs fuel to survive. If you cut off their food supply, they have to go somewhere else. That would require locating all their resource points and destroying them simultaneously. We lack the ships and firepower. Maybe you don't need firepower. Maybe you need to make their food sources less attractive. Poison the well, so to speak. Pip stared at her. That might be possible. Our scientists never considered it because we focused on direct combat. Sometimes the best solution isn't the obvious one. Dorothy stood up. Come on. Take me to meet these scientists of yours. The science deck was quieter than the galley. Crew members worked at strange consoles covered in lights and symbols. Pip approached a tall, thin creature that looked like it was made of crystal. Science Officer Trill, this is Dorothy. She is the human consultant. She has questions about the devourer swarm's resource consumption. Trill turned, light refracting through its body. The human who improved the galley food. An interesting skill set. How may I assist you? Dorothy spent the next hour asking questions. What materials did the swarm prefer? How did they process what they consumed? Were there any substances they avoided? Trill answered each question with increasing interest. Your approach is unconventional, Trill finally said, but logical. If we contaminated their primary resource asteroids with compounds they cannot process, they might avoid this sector entirely. Would it work? I would need to run simulations. But yes, it could work. It would require precise timing and coordination. Trill's body flashed with colors. This is the first new strategy proposed in months. Ambassador Realm should hear this. Dorothy felt a headache forming. I suppose he should. But I'm not a military tactician. I just think about things practically. Perhaps that is what we need, Trill said. We have been thinking like warriors. You think like someone solving a problem. Later that night, Dorothy found herself assigned temporary quarters. The room was small but clean, with a bed that adjusted to her size and a window showing the stars outside. She stood at that window for a long time, holding her wooden spoon. She was millions of miles from home, surrounded by aliens, and somehow she'd spent the day fixing their cafeteria and proposing military strategy. It was absurd. It was impossible, but it was also necessary. These people needed help. They'd made a mistake bringing her here, but she was here now. And Dorothy Walsh hadn't spent 70 years on Earth learning to walk away when people needed her. Well, Robert, she said to her late husband, wherever he was, looks like I'm having an adventure. Hope you're proud of me. Outside the window, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there, the devourer swarm was coming, and Dorothy had work to do. The alarm that woke Dorothy wasn't like any alarm she'd heard before. It sounded like a wounded animal mixed with sirens. She jerked awake in the strange bed, momentarily confused about where she was. Then memory flooded back. Spaceship. Aliens. Devourer swarm. She pulled on her apron over the simple clothes Pip had found for her and hurried into the corridor. Crew members rushed past in both directions. The lights flashed red. "Pip," she called out, spotting the small blue alien. "What's happening?" "Swarm scouts detected on our perimeter. 3 ships. Captain Brox has called all senior staff to the bridge." Pip's skin flashed with worried colors. "Ambassador Reln requests your presence as well." "I'm not senior staff." "No, but you are the human consultant. Please, we must hurry." The bridge was chaos. Screens showed ships moving in formation. Crew members shouted reports. Captain Brock stood in the center, his scaled face grim. 600 individual swarm units, someone reported. "Standard scout pattern. They're testing our defenses. All weapons ready," Brox ordered. "Fighter wings launch. We meet them head on." "Wait," Dorothy said. Everyone turned to look at her. She felt ridiculous standing there in her floral apron among all these warriors and weapons. "You said they're scouts?" "Yes," Reln confirmed. "Advance units that probe defenses before the main swarm arrives. Then they're looking for information." "What happens when you fight them?" "We destroy what we can. They retreat and report back to the main force." "So you're giving them exactly what they want. Information about your weapons, your tactics, your weak points," Brox growled. "What would you have us do? Let them attack unopposed?" Dorothy walked closer to the main screen, studying the swarm ships. They moved in tight formation, darting back and forth. "They're like wasps. When wasps scout near your house, you don't attack them. That just tells the nest where you are and makes them aggressive. You redirect them. Make them think there's nothing interesting here." "The human suggests we hide," Brock said dismissively. "I suggest you don't give them what they came for." "What are they scanning for?" Trill stepped forward from the science station. "Energy signatures, weapons, shield harmonics, biological readings. Can you fake those readings? Make yourselves look like something they wouldn't care about?" "We could adjust our emissions," Trill said slowly. "Project false signatures that mimic a dead ship or a natural phenomenon. But it has never been attempted. Neither has contaminating their resources," Dorothy pointed out. "But you agreed that might work. Sometimes you need to try new things." Reln's antennae twitched rapidly. "Captain Brox, her logic is sound. If we engage, we lose the element of surprise for our resource denial strategy. If we deceive the scouts, we gain time." Brox was quiet for a long moment. Dorothy could see him struggling between training and common sense. Finally, he nodded. "Science Officer Trill, implement the false signatures. All weapons remain ready, but do not fire unless I give the order. Fighter wings hold position." The next 10 minutes felt like hours. The crew worked frantically to adjust their emissions. The swarm ships drew closer. Dorothy watched the screen, her wooden spoon clutched in both hands like a security blanket. "They are scanning us," someone reported. "They are holding position." "Steady," Brock said. "No one moves." The swarm ships circled the celestial dawn like sharks. Dorothy held her breath. Then, slowly, they turned away and accelerated into the distance. The bridge erupted in relieved chatter. Pip bounced up and down, making happy chirping sounds. Even Brox looked impressed. "They believed the deception," Trill announced. "They classified us as debris from a previous battle. Not worthy of attention." "Unorthodox," Brox admitted, looking at Dorothy. "But effective. You have my respect, human. Just call me Dorothy. And I'm glad it worked because that was terrifying." "Your strategy bought us time," Reln said. "Time to implement the resource contamination plan." "Trill, what is your progress on the simulations?" "Promising. I need another 12 hours to finalize the calculations, but I believe we can contaminate 70% of the swarm's known resource points within this sector." "Do it," Brox ordered. "Use whatever resources you need." As the bridge crew returned to their normal duties, Dorothy felt exhaustion wash over her. The adrenaline was wearing off. Pip noticed and gently guided her toward the door. "You should rest," he said. "You performed admirably. I just suggested hiding." "That's not admirably." "You suggested thinking differently." "That is admirably." Pip's eyes were warm with admiration. "Many of us have forgotten that not every problem requires force." "You reminded us." They walked slowly through the corridors. Dorothy noticed crew members nodding to her with respect. News traveled fast on the ship. "Pip, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Why are you so nervous all the time?" "You're smart. You're capable. But you act like you're waiting to be punished." Pip's skin flickered through several colors. "My species is not considered warrior material. We are assigned support roles. Administration, minor repairs. I requested assignment to a frontline ship to prove myself, but I'm afraid constantly. Afraid of failing. Afraid of being sent home in disgrace." Dorothy stopped walking and turned to face him. "Listen to me. Fear doesn't make you weak. Fear is smart. It keeps you alert. The problem isn't being afraid. The problem is letting fear stop you from doing what needs to be done. You are afraid? Terrified. I'm an old woman millions of miles from home surrounded by things I don't understand. But these people need help, so I push through the fear and help them. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's just necessary." She smiled. "You've been helping me since I arrived. You got me fed, found me clothes, translated things I didn't understand. You've been brave this whole time, Pip. You just didn't notice." His skin turned a soft lavender color. "Thank you, Dorothy. That means much to me." They continued to her quarters. Dorothy was about to say goodnight when alarms blared again. Different alarms this time. Pip checked his wrist device and his color drained to pale blue. Boarding party. Somehow swarm units got through the hull. They are in Section 7. What's in Section 7? Medical bay. Wounded crew, civilians. Pip looked terrified. "We must seal the sections to contain them." "And trap everyone inside with those things?" Dorothy felt anger rise in her chest. "Where's Section 7? "Dorothy, no. You cannot fight them. You have no weapons. No training." She pulled the wooden spoon from her apron pocket. "I have this. And I have common sense. Take me there now. This is madness. This is necessary. Move, Pip." They ran through the corridors. Other crew members rushed past them, heading in the opposite direction. Dorothy's lungs burned. Her knees protested. She wasn't built for running anymore. But she kept moving. They reached Section 7 to find chaos. Swarm creatures, each the size of a large dog, scuttled across the walls and ceiling. Their mandibles clicked menacingly. Medical staff tried to evacuate patients, but several were pinned down. Dorothy assessed the situation in seconds. The swarm creatures were between the medical staff and the exit. They moved predictably, responding to the loudest sounds and brightest lights. "Pip, can you make noise on the other side of the room?" "What? Trust me. Make the loudest noise you can over there." She pointed to the far corner. Pip hesitated, then activated some kind of alarm on his wrist device. It shrieked painfully. All the swarm creatures turned toward it instantly. Dorothy moved fast. She grabbed a rolling medical cart and shoved it toward the trapped staff members. "Get behind this! Move!" As the staff scrambled, 3 swarm creatures noticed the movement and charged. Dorothy stepped between them and the civilians, her wooden spoon raised. The first creature lunged. Dorothy sidestepped and brought the spoon down hard on the creature's antenna. It recoiled, clicking frantically. The second one leapt at her face. She dropped and swept the spoon low, catching its legs and sending it tumbling. The third one was smarter. It circled, looking for an opening. Dorothy stayed between it and the civilians, breathing hard. "You want past me," she said quietly. "Not happening." "Not today," the creature charged. Dorothy waited until the last second, then drove the spoon into its open mandibles. Something crunched. The creature writhed and backed away, making horrible sounds. Security forces burst into the room, weapons firing. The swarm creatures fell quickly under coordinated fire. Within minutes, the threat was contained. Dorothy leaned against the wall, her wooden spoon cracked but intact. Her whole body shook with exhaustion and fear. Dorothy sat in Ambassador Relm's office with a cup of something that almost tasted like tea. Her hands still shook slightly from the encounter in Medical Bay. The cracked wooden spoon lay on the desk between them. "You defended 17 crew members with a cooking implement," Relm said. His antennae stood straight up in what Dorothy had learned was surprise. "The security footage has been viewed by half the ship. You are becoming something of a legend." "I was terrified the entire time," Dorothy admitted. "I just kept thinking about those medical staff. They needed someone to buy them time. I was there, so it had to be me. That is the definition of courage. Acting despite fear, not acting without it." Relm folded 2 of his forehands. "The Galactic Council has been informed of your contributions. They wish to speak with you directly. More giant bugs who'll be disappointed I'm not a soldier? Perhaps. But they need to hear your perspective on the resource contamination plan. Trill's simulations are complete. If we proceed, it will be the largest coordinated operation in Council history. 12 fleets, 47 ships, all working in perfect synchronization. Dorothy sipped her not-quite tea. That sounds complicated. It is. Which is why many Council members doubt it can succeed. They prefer the traditional approach. Gather our forces and engage the swarm in direct combat. Which hasn't worked so far. Correct. But it is familiar. Comfortable. Military minds often resist unconventional strategies. Relon leaned forward. They need to hear from the person who conceived the plan. They need to understand the logic behind it. I'm not good at talking to important people. I ran a cafeteria. I baked pies. I'm nobody special. You defended this ship with a wooden spoon. You improved crew morale with better food. You proposed a strategy that might save billions of lives. You are far more than you believe yourself to be. Before Dorothy could respond, Pip burst through the door. His skin flashed emergency red. Ambassador, the Council transmission is ready. They are waiting. Reln stood. Come, Dorothy. Time to change the galaxy. The communication room was dark except for a large holographic display. 12 alien faces appeared, each more strange than the last. One looked like living fire. Another resembled a cloud of gas with eyes. A third was just a geometric pattern that somehow conveyed intelligence. Council members, Reln began formally. May I present Dorothy Walsh of Earth. She has provided crucial assistance to our mission. The fire creature spoke first, its voice crackling. We are told you proposed contaminating the swarm's resources. Explain your reasoning, human. Dorothy cleared her throat. This was worse than speaking at the PTA meetings. At least there she'd known everyone's faces. It's simple, really. Every living thing needs food. The swarm eats metals and energy sources. If you make those things unappetizing or harmful, they'll go elsewhere, like putting vinegar in your garbage to keep raccoons away. Raccoons? The cloud creature asked. Small animals on Earth that raid trash cans. The principle is the same. You don't have to fight everything. Sometimes you just need to make yourself less attractive as a target. A crystalline being spoke next. Your plan requires unprecedented coordination. One fleet arriving late or early would compromise the entire operation. The margin for error is non-existent. That's true of most complicated recipes too, Dorothy said. When I make a souffle, everything has to happen at the right time and temperature or it collapses. You plan carefully, you prepare properly, and you trust your people to do their jobs. You compare military operations to cooking, the fire creature said. Not a question. An observation. I compare problem solving to problem solving. The specifics change, but the principles don't. Know your goal. Understand your resources. Execute with precision. My husband spent 30 years planning military operations. I spent 30 years feeding 500 children lunch every day. Both required the same kind of thinking. The geometric pattern shifted. You are untrained in warfare. Your tactics are unorthodox. Why should we trust this strategy? Dorothy felt her temper rise. The same temper that had faced down angry parents and stubborn administrators. Because your trained warriors haven't stopped the swarm yet. Because orthodox tactics failed 17 civilizations. Because sometimes the best answer comes from someone who thinks differently. She pointed at the display. You came to Earth looking for a warrior. You got me instead. That wasn't what you wanted, but maybe it's what you needed. Someone who solves problems instead of just fighting them. Silence filled the room. The council members looked at each other in whatever way their species managed. Finally, the cloud creature spoke. Your words have merit, but this strategy risks everything. If it fails, we will have positioned our fleets incorrectly for conventional defense. The swarm will overwhelm us. And if you fight them head-on with your conventional defense, what are your chances? Estimated survival probability is 18%, the crystalline being admitted. And with my plan? Unknown. The variables are too numerous to calculate. So you're choosing between a known failure and a possible success. Seems like an easy choice to me. Reln stepped forward. Council members, I have observed Dorothy Walsh for 3 days. She improved ship morale, evaded swarm scouts, and defended crew members with minimal resources. She thinks practically about impossible situations. I believe her strategy will work. Captain Brox also endorses the plan, the fire creature noted. His military record is exemplary. That carries weight, more silence. Dorothy watched the alien faces, trying to read expressions on beings that had no human features. Her wooden spoon felt heavy in her apron pocket. "We will vote," the geometric pattern announced. "All in favor of implementing the resource contamination strategy?" One by one, the council members indicated approval. Not unanimous, but enough. The fire creature nodded, which looked strange on a being made of flames. The motion carries. Ambassador Reln, coordinate with all fleet commanders. Science Officer Trill will distribute contamination protocols. We execute in 36 hours. The creature's eyes focused on Dorothy. "Human, you have convinced us to attempt something unprecedented. I hope your confidence is justified." "So do I," Dorothy said honestly. "But doing nothing guarantees failure. At least this way we're trying." The transmission ended. The room brightened. Dorothy felt her knees go weak. Pip caught her elbow. "You were magnificent," he whispered. "I was scared speechless." "You hit it well." Reln placed a hand on her shoulder. "Thank you, Dorothy." "The council listens to logic, but they needed to hear passion as well. You provided both." "Now comes the hard part," Dorothy said, "making this actually work." The next 36 hours were the busiest of Dorothy's life. Trill worked with her to explain the contamination protocols in simple terms. Pip helped her record instructions for the fleet commanders. Captain Brox requested her input on timing and coordination. She barely slept. When she did, she dreamed of the swarm and her inadequate wooden spoon. But she also saw how the crew changed. They worked with purpose now, with hope. The mess hall filled at every meal. People smiled. They believed something might actually work. "They believe in you," Pip told her during a brief rest period. "They believe in themselves," Dorothy corrected. "I just gave them permission to think differently." Finally, the operation began. Dorothy stood on the bridge as 12 fleets moved into position. Each one carried contamination devices that would poison the swarm's preferred resources with compounds their biology couldn't process. "All fleets report ready," a communications officer announced. "Captain." Brox looked at Dorothy. "Would you like to give the order?" "Me? I'm not military." "No, but this is your strategy. Your moment." Dorothy stepped forward, feeling the weight of thousands of lives depending on her idea. An idea born from chasing raccoons away from her garbage cans back in Montana. "All fleets," she said into the communications system, "execute contamination protocols. And good luck to all of you." On the screens, ships moved in perfect synchronization. Devices deployed. Asteroids and resource points were saturated with the contamination compounds. The entire operation took 7 minutes. Then they waited. "Swarm response?" Brox asked. "No change in their movement patterns," sensors reported. They continued toward their projected resource points. Time crawled. Dorothy realized she was holding her breath. "Swarm ships reaching first contaminated asteroid," sensors announced. On the main screen, thousands of swarm creatures swarmed over the asteroid, beginning their feeding process. Then they stopped. Pulled back. The massive creatures swirled in confusion. "They are retreating from the asteroid," sensors confirmed, moving to the next resource point. "Which we also contaminated," Trill said, unable to hide the excitement in their voice. One by one, the swarm encountered contaminated resources. Each time they retreated in confusion. Their coordinated patterns broke down. They scattered in different directions, searching for clean food sources. "It is working," Brock said in wonder. "They are fragmenting, losing cohesion." "Swarm forces withdrawing from the sector," sensors reported. "They are moving toward the outer rim." The bridge erupted in cheers. Pip bounced around making happy sounds. Even Brock smiled his terrifying smile. Dorothy sat down heavily, overwhelmed with relief. They'd actually done it. The plan worked. The celebration lasted 3 hours before reality set in. Dorothy sat in the mess hall, surrounded by happy crew members, but her mind was working on a problem. The swarm had retreated, yes, but they hadn't disappeared. They just moved away from the contaminated sector. "They have to eat something," she said to Pip, who was enjoying his third helping of the new improved stew. "Living things don't just stop eating. Perhaps they will find resources elsewhere and leave us alone," Pip suggested hopefully. "Or they'll get desperate and attack anything they can find." "Desperate creatures are dangerous creatures." She stood up. "I need to talk to Trill." She found the science officer in the lab reviewing data from the operation. The crystalline being refracted light, and what Dorothy had learned was their version of a pleased expression. "Dorothy, your strategy exceeded all projections. The swarm exodus was 94% complete. Only small scattered groups remain in the sector. That's what worries me. Where are they going? What happens when they find new food sources? Trill's light patterns shifted. We tracked their general trajectory. They are moving toward the outer rim regions. Unpopulated systems, mostly. Some uncharted territories. Mostly unpopulated? There are 3 small colonies in their projected path. Pre-industrial civilizations. They would not survive a swarm encounter. Dorothy felt her stomach drop. So we just moved the problem somewhere else. We saved ourselves and doomed people who can't defend themselves. That was not the intention. Doesn't matter. We have to warn them. Help them prepare. The Council has no jurisdiction in Outer Rim territories. Those systems refused membership decades ago. We cannot intervene without violating their sovereignty. Dorothy slammed her hand on the table. Then we ask permission. We offer help. We don't just leave them to die. That is not how galactic politics work. Then galactic politics are wrong. She stormed out, anger burning in her chest. Pip hurried after her, struggling to keep up. Dorothy, please. You cannot change Council policy. These systems chose isolation. We must respect that. Even when it means letting innocent people get eaten by space bugs? She stopped walking. No, I didn't come all this way to save half the galaxy. Either we save everyone or we failed. What can you do? I'm going to talk to Realm. And if he won't help, I'll talk to the Council again. And if they won't help, I'll steal a ship and go myself. Pip made a choking sound. That is illegal on 17 different levels. Then I'll break 17 laws. Those people need help. Ambassador Realm listened to her arguments with his usual patience. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You are asking the Council to violate established protocols, to interfere with sovereign systems, to potentially start a diplomatic incident during a crisis situation. I'm asking you to do the right thing. The right thing is not always simple. But his antennae twitched thoughtfully. However, there may be a solution. If someone were to travel to these systems as a private citizen, not as a Council representative, they could offer warnings and advice. Technically, that would not violate sovereignty. It would simply be one individual helping another. You're suggesting I go myself. I am suggesting that if a certain human wished to undertake a humanitarian mission, the Celestial Dawn happens to be traveling near those systems for resupply purposes. And if that human happened to speak with local populations during our stops, well, we cannot control the actions of civilians aboard our ship. Dorothy smiled. That's the most bureaucratic permission I've ever received. I learned from the best. Bureaucracy can be a tool for good when properly applied. 12 hours later, the Celestial Dawn arrived at the first Outer Rim system. The planet below was covered in green and blue, beautiful and primitive. No signs of advanced technology. Just simple settlements visible from orbit. Their development level is approximately equivalent to Earth's 14th century, Trill reported. Agriculture-based society. No space capability. They would perceive swarm creatures as demons or monsters. Then we need to make them understand, Dorothy said. Can we land? Captain Brock shook his head. Landing a ship this size would terrify them. We would be invaders in their eyes. But we can send a small shuttle. I'll go, Dorothy volunteered. Absolutely not, Brox growled. You are too valuable. We will send trained diplomats, who look like giant bugs and bear lizards. No offense, but you'll scare them worse than the swarm will. Dorothy pulled her apron straight. I look human. They look human mostly. At least we'll be starting from similar anatomy. She has a point, Reln admitted, but she should not go alone. I will accompany her, Pip said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. I am small, non-threatening, and Dorothy trusts me. You are afraid of everything, Brox pointed out. Yes, but she taught me that being afraid does not mean being unable. I will go. Dorothy squeezed his shoulder. Thank you, Pip. The shuttle landed in a clearing near one of the larger settlements. Dorothy and Pip stepped out carefully, hands empty and visible. Within minutes, they were surrounded by beings that looked almost human, but with subtle differences. Larger eyes, slight feathers instead of hair, but close enough. An elderly female stepped forward, clearly a leader. She spoke in a musical language Dorothy couldn't understand. But Pip's translation device worked quickly. She asks what manner of spirits we are and what we want from her people. Dorothy took a deep breath. Time to do what she did best. Talk like a normal person. Tell her we're not spirits. We're just people from very far away. And we came to warn her about danger coming to her world, Pip translated. The leader's expression remained cautious. What danger? Have you noticed the sky changing? New stars appearing? Yes, our priests say it is an omen. They're right to worry. Those aren't stars. They're creatures. Millions of them. They eat everything in their path. They're coming this way because we pushed them away from our homes. I'm sorry for that. But we want to help you prepare. The translation took time. Other villagers gathered. Dorothy could see fear growing in their faces. How do we fight sky demons? The leader asked. You don't fight them directly, but you can survive them. They're attracted to certain materials, metals especially. If you hide your metal tools and weapons, cover them with dirt and stone, the swarm might pass over without noticing. They're also drawn to energy, to heat. Large fires will attract them. Small controlled fires are safer, and stay underground when they come. In caves or cellars, they can't follow you there easily. More translation. More worried conversations among the villagers. Why do you tell us this? The leader asked. Why does a sky person care about our survival? Dorothy thought about her answer carefully. Because everyone deserves a chance to protect themselves. Because my people were lucky enough to have warning and preparation. You deserve the same. Because leaving you to die would be wrong. The leader studied Dorothy's face for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. You have kind eyes, sky person. I will share your warnings with the other settlements. We will prepare as you suggest. There are 2 other worlds in danger, Dorothy said. We'll go to them next. But time is short. The swarm could arrive within days. We will be ready. Thank you for your warning. As they flew to the second planet, Pip was unusually quiet. Finally he spoke. You gave them hope. Even facing impossible odds, you gave them a chance. That's all anyone can do. Give people the tools and knowledge to help themselves. The second world was different. An aquatic species living in underwater cities. They initially refused to surface to meet the strange visitors. But Dorothy persisted, and eventually their leaders agreed to listen. The warning was similar, adjusted for their environment. Hide metallic structures. Reduce energy signatures. Seek shelter in the deep trenches where the swarm couldn't follow. The third world was the hardest. A species in the middle of a civil war. 2 factions fighting over territory. Neither trusted outsiders. Both assumed Dorothy and Pip were spies or weapons from the enemy. It took hours of patient talking, of sitting between the 2 leaders and refusing to leave until they listened, of explaining that their war would mean nothing if the swarm consumed everything. You can fight each other after you survive, Dorothy said bluntly. But right now you need to work together or you all die. Your choice. Something about her grandmother tone, the absolute certainty in her voice, made them pause, made them listen. By the time the shuttle returned to the celestial dawn, Dorothy was exhausted. 3 worlds warned. 3 populations preparing as best they could. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. The swarm will arrive at the first planet in approximately 18 hours, Trill reported. Based on our observations, they are in a feeding frenzy state, desperate, dangerous. Then we stay, Dorothy said. We monitor. We help if we can. Captain Brox looked at her. You have done all that policy allows. More than policy allows, technically. You are not responsible for what happens next. Maybe not, but I'll stay anyway. Those people deserve to know someone cares about whether they live or die. Dorothy watched the main screen as the swarm arrived at the first planet. Thousands of creatures moving in chaotic patterns instead of their usual coordination. They were starving, desperate. The view from orbit showed them descending toward the surface like a dark cloud. They are scanning for resources, Trill reported. Energy signatures are minimal from the planet. The population followed your instructions. But some swarm units are still landing, sensors announced. They are searching populated areas. Dorothy's hands gripped her wooden spoon. Can we see what's happening on the ground? A closer view appeared. The feathered people were hiding in caves and underground shelters, just as Dorothy had instructed. Small groups of swarm creatures scuttled through the empty settlements, investigating, but with no obvious metal or energy sources, they moved on quickly. They are not attacking systematically, Brox observed. They are hunting for food, not targets. Because they're starving, Dorothy said. They don't want to fight. They want a meal. Hours passed. The swarm continued searching, but found little worth consuming. Slowly, the majority of the creatures began leaving the planet's surface, moving on to search elsewhere. Minimal casualties reported, Trill said, monitoring communications from below. Fewer than 24 deaths. Most of the population survived. Dorothy felt tears on her face. They made it. They actually made it. The pattern repeated at the second planet. The aquatic species had hidden in deep trenches, their metallic structures camouflaged with natural materials. The swarm probed the oceans briefly but found nothing concentrated enough to justify staying. The third planet was harder. The two warring factions had worked together but imperfectly. Some settlements hadn't received the warning in time. Some leaders had refused to believe. Dorothy watched helplessly as swarm creatures attacked those unprepared areas. "We should intervene," Pip said desperately. "Fire on the swarm. Save them." "If we fire, the entire swarm will focus on us," Brock said grimly. "We would draw them away from the planet, yes, but we would not survive. 3,000 crew members would die." Dorothy closed her eyes. Math was cruel sometimes. Save hundreds below or sacrifice thousands aboard. There was no good answer, but then something unexpected happened. The prepared settlements began mounting rescue operations. They ventured out during brief moments when the swarm moved away, pulling survivors into their protected areas. The two factions worked together, saving each other's people. "They are adapting," Trill observed, "using the strategies you taught them and improvising new ones." By the time the swarm finally moved on, most of the planet's population had survived. Not everyone. Dorothy knew those losses would haunt her. But thousands lived who would have died without warning. The swarm is fragmenting further, sensors reported, breaking into smaller groups. They are moving in all directions, searching for resources. "They are dying," Trill added quietly. "Without concentrated food sources, they cannot sustain their population. The species will not go extinct, but they will never threaten the galaxy at this scale again." Dorothy sat down heavily. It was over. The plan had worked. The price had been high, but the galaxy was safe. "We should return to Council Space," Reln said. "Report our success. You will be honored as a hero, Dorothy." "I don't want to be a hero. I want to go home." The words hung in the air. Everyone had been so focused on the crisis that no one had discussed what happened after. Dorothy was millions of miles from Earth, from her kitchen, from her normal life. "Of course," Reln said gently. "We will transport you home immediately, with our gratitude and the gratitude of billions of lives you saved." 3 days later, Dorothy stood in the teleportation chamber where she'd first arrived, the same chamber she'd scolded Reln for keeping messy. It was clean now. The whole ship was cleaner, more organized, more hopeful. The crew had insisted on a farewell ceremony. Dorothy had tried to refuse, but Pip's sad face had changed her mind. Now hundreds of crew members from dozens of species filled the observation deck, watching through windows as she prepared to leave. Captain Brox presented her with a medal, some kind of council honor she didn't fully understand. "For extraordinary service and exceptional courage," he said formally. Then more quietly, "You taught us that strength comes in many forms." "Thank you." Trill gave her a data crystal containing the complete story of their mission, "so your people will know what you accomplished." Pip hugged her, his damp skin soaking her apron. "I will never forget you, Dorothy. You taught me to be brave. You were already brave, sweetheart. You just needed someone to notice." Finally, Reln stepped forward. In his hands was a new wooden spoon, carved from some kind of alien wood that shimmered with internal light. "Your original spoon cracked defending our crew. This is made from a tree on my homeworld. It is traditional to craft tools for those we honor. May it serve you as well as you served us." Dorothy accepted it, running her fingers over the smooth surface. "It's beautiful." "Thank you." "No, Dorothy Walsh of Earth, thank you. You came to us by accident and became exactly what we needed. Not a warrior with weapons, but a warrior with wisdom. Safe travels home." The teleportation process felt the same as before. White light. Strange pulling sensation. Then suddenly she stood in her kitchen. The apple pie she'd pulled from the oven days ago sat on the counter, somehow still fresh. Time must have worked differently. Dorothy looked around her familiar kitchen. The same yellow curtains, the same old refrigerator, the same table where she'd eaten breakfast for 30 years. It all seemed smaller now, quieter. She placed the alien wooden spoon on the counter next to her old one. Both tools, both important, both part of her story. The phone rang. Dorothy answered to find her neighbor asking about the church fundraiser. Had she finished those pies? People were counting on her. "I'll have them ready," Dorothy promised. Just had a busy few days. Doing what? You never go anywhere. Dorothy smiled. Let's just say I had some unexpected visitors. I'll tell you about it at the fundraiser. She hung up and started mixing dough. Her hands moved automatically, following patterns established over decades. But her mind was elsewhere, thinking about Pip learning courage, about 3 planets learning to survive, about a galaxy learning to think differently. There was a knock at the door. Dorothy opened it to find a man in a dark suit holding official-looking papers. Dorothy Walsh? I'm from the government. We have some questions about unusual energy readings detected at this location 3 days ago. May we come in? Dorothy sighed. Of course someone had noticed. Technology always left traces. Come in, I'll put on tea. This might take a while to explain. We're prepared to hear whatever you have to say, ma'am. The readings were quite extraordinary. Dorothy led them to her kitchen table. As they sat, she pulled out both wooden spoons, the cracked earthly one and the shimmering alien one. It started, she said, when some folks made a mistake about what kind of warrior they needed. Let me tell you about the galaxy and how I accidentally saved it with common sense and a wooden spoon. 6 months passed. Dorothy's story had been classified by multiple governments, but she'd been allowed to return to her normal life. Mostly normal anyway. She still baked pies, still attended church, still ran the strictest kitchen in Montana. But twice a week, young people in dark suits appeared at her door. Scientists, military strategists, diplomats. They asked questions about alien psychology, about problem-solving under pressure, about leadership without authority. Dorothy taught them the same things she'd taught the Celestial Dawn crew. Think practically, solve problems instead of fighting them, care about the people you're trying to help. Sometimes the answer isn't complicated. Pip visited once a month, arriving by teleportation in her backyard at midnight to avoid detection. He brought news from the galaxy. The outer rim planets were thriving. The Council had reformed some of their policies. Other species had started studying human approaches to conflict resolution. They are calling it the Walsh Doctrine, Pip told her during one visit. Exhaust all peaceful options before resorting to violence. Understand your enemy's needs. Create solutions that benefit everyone. That's just basic common sense, Dorothy said, serving him tea and cookies. Common sense is surprisingly uncommon across the galaxy. You made us realize that. On Earth, Dorothy had become something of a legend in classified circles. The grandmother who saved the galaxy. The woman who fought aliens with a wooden spoon. The human who proved that Earth's strength wasn't just in weapons and warriors, but to her neighbors she was just Dorothy. The woman who baked the best pies, who always had good advice, who'd somehow become even wiser after that weird week she won't talk about. Dorothy was fine with that. Heroes were exhausting. Grandmothers were practical. She stood at her kitchen window one evening, watching the stars come out. Somewhere up there, the celestial dawn was flying. Pip was learning to be braver. Reln was probably buried in paperwork. Brox was commanding with a bit more flexibility than before, and the galaxy was safer. Not perfect, never perfect, but better. Dorothy picked up her alien wooden spoon and smiled. It still worked perfectly for mixing dough. Some tools served multiple purposes. Some weapons weren't weapons at all. Some warriors didn't need swords. Sometimes all you needed was common sense, a good heart, and the willingness to help when help was needed. She returned to her baking. The church fundraiser was next week and people were counting on her pies. It wasn't saving the galaxy, but it mattered to her community, and that was enough. Though if another desperate alien ambassador showed up needing help, well, she still had that spoon.